This is Business Talk, your business, your success. Sponsored by Take Action Business Coaching. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and may not be the views of the staff, advertisers, and owners of the station. Advice given is not intended to replace that of your business advisor. Now, let's get down to talking about your business, your success. This is Business Talk.
Well, good afternoon, Peg. Here we go again.
Yes, here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. And Pete and I, we've been doing this for years now, hosting this show, and with our partners as well. Dawn has not hosted yet, has she?
We haven't had Dawn on. Dawn is our newest coach,
Yes.
and she actually is just completing her training.
Yes. and
Formal training.
Formal training. She's
Yes.
already been trained
She's
for a
been
year,
trained.
but now she goes off and gets trained again.
Oh, yeah.
And then now we have Michelle Cacasola, who is usually here as well, rotates in.
Right.
And our next show, next Saturday, it'll just be me and one of our clients from a company called Car Onliner. It's a manufacturer of capital equipment for auto body shops.
Right.
So it'll be the director of operations teaching and learning a little bit about her ways throughout the last few years on leadership and dealing with different
In
circumstances.
a rapidly growing organization.
Yes.
They've grown very fast.
So next week it'll be Catherine and I, because Pete will be in Bangkok.
I'll be in Thailand.
Thailand,
Yes.
really. More than just Bangkok.
Yep, right.
And
right.
Pete, what are you going to be doing next week?
I am on vacation with my oldest son, Ben, who is 31, and he lives in Chicago. And this summer I was over there visiting him, and we were shooting pool and talking. He said, you want to go to Bangkok with me? And I said, okay.
So now you get to go over to Thailand.
Yeah, I'm just
So
going.
it'll just be me and Catherine next week. But this week, let's talk a little bit about how our show's going to go this week, Pete. We're going to talk about good news, right?
Oh, yeah. We always do good news
We're gonna
because you folks are bombarded with the opposite of that all the
Right,
time.
Right. So we want to definitely do some good news. And then the other thing we want to do is, I love our topic. And Pete, I cannot take credit for our topics or our research. Pete does all of that. And today you have hit upon what I absolutely love.
It's an awesome article. It's out of the Wall Street Journal, and it says the title of this is "The Secrets of Resilience," and then the subtitle just says, "What does it take to conquer life's adversities? Lessons from successful adults who overcame difficult childhoods." And when we say difficult, we mean difficult.
So what we want to talk a little bit about is, and I'll share my experience, and we're going to talk about success with kids, your family members, and in history, and how do we get resilience. So we're going to do that. We're going to dive into that.
Right.
But first, we want to do our good news.
All right, so good news. We got a bunch of it here now. S&P 500 powers to new heights. We all know this stuff, but the stock market has been kind of on a run here, so that's
a
good.
good thing.
It just continues,
Good thing.
which is nice.
Yes, and we're far away from 2008.
Right.
I remember in 2008, 2009, when we were going through that, and Pete and I were talking about how long we would be in this recession. And Pete had talked to one of your financial advisors
Right.
that you use.
He
and
said it was going to be 10 years.
And I remember you saying 10 years, no way. And you know what?
Yeah.
He was right. Well, actually, it came back a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean,
so.
it started back. But
Yeah.
it's
It's here.
It has been a long time.
It's been a
yeah.
long time. It feels like yesterday.
So this next one, this one is kind of cool because I'm an engineer at heart.
You're a chemical engineer
Chemical
by training.
engineer, but
and
I'm interested in, how stuff works. The Panama Canal, they have made a bigger Panama Canal.
I did
Everybody
not know
knows that,
I
right?
did not know that.
Well, they redug another canal next to the other one down in Panama.
How long did
it's
that
much
take?
wider, and they spent $5 billion on it. But there's much
you should see the
bigger
picture.
ships going through there. I mean, huge. And these ships carry thousands of these ocean-going containers. And Panama's $5 billion investment to expand its century-old canal, it's a 100-year-old canal, is paying off as U.S. shipping lines are sending more cargoes through the passage instead of the Suez Canal. So ships can come through there and get to the East Coast. So it's increased shipping volume on the East Coast because they can get there faster.
That's interesting. Okay, so it didn't tell you how long it took them to.
Well, it might, Peg.
That's
it's taken a
amazing.
few years.
Oh, okay.
Some of these vessels carry 14,000 of those ocean-going containers.
Oh, my.
You know those things that
That's
are mounted on the back of a truck?
Sure.
Some of these ships can carry almost 15,000 of those.
You know, if you think about it, I
lot.
mean, what an impact on the world for that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
good.
it's reducing our shipping costs, which makes the economy more efficient.
Because we can do bigger ships through.
And we can ship shorter distances. It's a shorter distance.
So because we can do bigger ships, it's a shorter distance, which means it's saving us time and money.
Time and money.
Wow.
Yep. There we go.
That's good. That's a good news.
Okay, next one. Drones become mining's flight to safety. Now think about this. If you ever been in have you been in a coal mine?
I have never been
I've
in a
been
coal
in a
mine.
couple of them.
Oh, have you? Is it
yeah.
claustrophobic?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it'll freak you out. One of them.
I think it would.
I actually you had to bend over. You had to walk bent over because you couldn't stand up.
Oh, my.
And you walk way, way in. And nothing is ever higher than like 4 feet all day. Can you imagine?
I didn't know that.
Well, this particular one, it's a seam thing.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But anyway, this article is about they're using drones to reduce costs and also to save lives. They're sending drones in to check out whether there's enough oxygen, dust levels, things like that inside mines. Isn't that cool?
Oh, we saved birds. Wasn't that the birds' job back in the days?
It used to be a canary, right?
Yes,
Exactly.
back in the day.
Yes.
Wow, that is good news.
It is pretty interesting.
That's good news. And I see we have one more. What is
it's
this?
a funny one. Yeah, it's estate plans don't just have to be for people. Now, Peg and I are big dog lovers. Now, I borrow a dog from you.
Yes. Well,
but you
I'd
have
like
3
to say
dogs
we
and
have
2 cats.
We have joint custody of Liberty.
Joint custody of 1 dog, Liberty. But how many people in the United States own a pet?
Oh,
Any
golly.
idea?
What
And
percent?
Alan, you jump in on this.
50%, I guess.
Alan, what do you think?
I don't know.
Is he going to say?
I'm saying 50%.
I would say about 65%, 70%.
Okay, Alan, ding, ding, ding.
Alan!
68%.
Oh, Alan
That's a
gets a
pretty high
star.
percentage. No pet, 32%.
Holy
48%
cow.
of those animals are dogs, 38% are cats, 10% are fish, 6% birds, and on and on and on.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
Alan, that was good. Good guessing.
But what
was
what
really
they're talking
just a
about
guess.
here, this is in the finance section. They're talking about family finance, that last year Nick Braun created a will for his human family soon after he made a formal provisions for his dog Gus.
Okay, what did
He
he do
named a
for Gus?
caregiver. He set aside money. He created a care plan, and he formalized his agreements so that they know
Oh, my
who the animal's going to go
Do
to.
you know,
I mean, holy cow!
But honestly, I have to tell you, I was
can have
traveling
that
over
one.
the holidays a couple weeks ago, and I was thinking, boy, we have all of our family. I had Allie, so I have
Right.
my husband John and I, and then Allie and Lauren.
Right.
And I was like, we don't have a couple of our dogs and our cats, and nobody knows who would get them if something happened.
That's what you thought of?
That's what I thought
Wow.
of. If something
That's
happened
funny.
to us, what happens to our animals?
That's a good thought. See, you
See,
need
there we
this
go.
article.
I need to have
right?
a plan.
Yes.
I need to have the estate
We
plan.
have some great attorneys that'll help you. with
Yes,
that.
we do.
Yes, we do.
I wanted to chime in on the
Yes.
the coal mining.
Yes.
My first radio job was down in Grundy, Virginia, which is a coal mining area.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I took a tour of a coal mine.
Yeah.
It was a drift mine. There's shaft mines.
Yeah.
And then a drift mine, which is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And it was
It's
high
in the side of a hill.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
and that's called high coal, where you stand up. There's
Yeah.
low coal, where you can't stand up. So we took this.
I cool.
It's high coal, okay? So me and another gal from the radio station, we took this tour, and we were there when they were able to put a shot off. In other words, dynamite.
Dynamite,
And,
yeah.
it's,
Really?
and it's done in honeycombs. It's not just like one big open cavern, because they have to leave pillars of coal
To hold the mountain up.
to hold it
Yeah,
up, basically.
right.
But the most dangerous job is a roof boulder, because he's
Sure.
going in
Yeah.
to where there's unsupported coal above. So he has a machine
Yep.
that drills up big screws,
Yeah.
basically up
Yeah.
into the ceiling to secure the
Yep.
coal. But that's one of the most dangerous jobs in a mine is
Mm-hmm.
a roof
my.
boulder.
A roof boulder.
Oh my, that would be interesting.
And
Wow.
and
bless
the
our miners.
The concussion of the shot being put off was amazing. It was cool.
I
You
bet.
didn't hurt. You
Yeah,
just felt
right.
your entire body just kind of.
Vibrate.
Whoa.
Oh my,
Yeah. Right.
that is interesting. Well, I like that we have drones now.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
That
That's
is
pretty
saving
cool.
lives.
It's
That's
saving lives,
wonderful.
man.
Wonderful. Well, so great news, Pete. Great news. And Alan, you did beat me on the percentage of animals. I want to applaud you.
68%. That's a lot
I'm
of people.
tipping my hat off to Alan.
What do I win?
You win a star on your forehead. I'll give it to you next.
Okay.
And they do think there is some statistical evidence of some type of correlation between animal ownership and healthy. But they
There
think
is.
maybe healthy people will tend to get an animal more often than somebody who's not healthy. You know what I mean? It may not be cause and effect.
Oh,
it may just be an
understand.
association.
Because I have seen those articles that say, "Oh, be healthier with
Right,
the animal," but
right.
I gotcha. Well, that's good
Cool.
news. Good news. So,
Okay, so this resilience thing.
yes, this topic is
let me
fascinating.
get you started thinking about this,
Okay.
radio audience. In 1962, the psychologist Victor Goertzel and his wife Mildred, Victor and Mildred,
Okay.
that's a 1962 couple, published a book called Cradles of Eminence, a provocative study of childhoods over 400 famous 20th century men and women. They selected individuals who had had at least 2 biographies written about them. And
Two
who had-
documentaries.
Yeah, 2 biographies
Oh,
written about
biographies,
them,
I'm sorry,
and
yes.
who had made a positive contribution to society. People like Marie Curie, Frida Kahlo, Louis Armstrong, Eleanor Roosevelt, Henry Ford, John D. Rockefeller, which is the original Rockefeller. The Goertzels found that less than 15% of their famous men and women had been raised in a supportive, untroubled home. 10% in a mixed home, in other words, one with not too many issues, but not perfect. Of the 400, a full 75%, 300 of those people out of 400 had grown up in a family burdened with a severe problem like big-time poverty, abuse, absent parents, alcoholism, serious illness, or some other misfortune.
Oh, more when we get back.
To learn more about today's topic, call 614-306-7922. Now, back to more Business Talk.
So we're talking today about the secrets of resilience, and this article is starting out with a book that was written quite a few years ago, by a psychologist, and they interviewed 400 very famous, successful people, and 75% of those individuals had come from a home with a severe issue, and sometimes multiple issues: poverty, physical abuse, mental abuse, absent parents, alcoholism, illnesses, some other big-time misfortune. So 3/4 of these folks. And they said this
Yeah.
statistically, it's continuing now.
Right. And then we're still seeing that.
It doesn't mean you can't be a very successful person if you had a normal home, right?
Well, okay, so I want to tell you.
But it's interesting,
So
isn't
one
it?
of the things that Pete gets this article because Pete does all of our, our research. And one of the things, so John and I live right in Upper Arlington, and we have Allie and Lauren. Allie's 16, Lauren is 13.
Right.
And I have said more than once to both Pete and John, my husband, we're the American family. We have no issues. We're happy. It's a normal life. And one thing that happened to me is I did not have a normal life. I grew up in
what was your childhood
really
like?
rough childhood. So my mom was an alcoholic as well as used drugs, tried to commit suicide multiple times, was in mental institution after mental institution. And my dad was
several, right?
Several. I mean, multiple. Now, my dad was normal. Obviously, I'm very close to my dad. My dad was there for us. He was like the strength behind the whole family.
He was a businessman.
Yes,
right?
he was a businessman, a very successful businessman.
He traveled.
He traveled a lot. So we were up to, we had to do everything. We were doing our own laundry and cooking and cleaning, and there's 4 of us kids.
Right.
And it made me very strong.
And you're the youngest.
And I'm the youngest, and my mom she has passed away. She ended up being diagnosed with schizophrenia. Yeah. So there was a lot of mental illness.
She was sweet.
And she was as sweet as they came.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
She just was mentally ill.
She just couldn't handle things. Yeah. And so it made us have to step up. So at the young age, I'm doing stuff. That's what you do. I had to do what I needed to do. And so I've always asked, and as we're looking at this article and talking about this, I'm like, am I giving our kids, or are we, it's not just me, are we giving our kids too much as far as support? I know that sounds funny, but we don't fight. Right. There aren't, there's fights, but it's just a normal childhood. There's no divorce. There's no alcoholism. There's no, it's just normal.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about my parents divorced when I was about 16. However, it was pretty amicable. They really weren't happy together, so it was fine.
Right.
And other than that, I had a very happy childhood.
Right.
Very normal.
Well, obviously you did well. So you did well. So you can
So
you can be that
You can
way.
do it. Don't lose faith. You know?
Yeah,
And,
like it's okay to be normal.
But you would think it would be a goal for the family to want to have a normal family.
You would think
know?
that would be. And I did wonder because I think when you have this adversity, and let's talk about it for a second, and I want to bring it to business. Now, I know we have more article to go through, obviously, but I've been thinking about it. So when we coach individuals, so this is business talk. And so Pete and I are business coaches. So we go into companies and we work with teams, and we've been doing this for 12 years.
Right. You coach individuals and sometimes groups.
And one of the things is every once in a while there may be some dysfunction
Absolutely.
in the business. And what's good about that is I lived with dysfunction. I was brought up with dysfunction. So for me to be thrown out that dysfunction, it's nothing, right? But it does happen in businesses, and it does make a business stronger if you can overcome it as a team, and it can bring you together as a family and as a company.
Right.
And sometimes you learn more from a bad manager.
Well, and for example, last week, Peg and I were at a client, and the owner of the company came in the room and said, look, we've got a problem. You need to help us with this, and it needs to be done by the first of the year. You remember this.
Yes.
And the individual that he was talking about was sitting in the room, which is a little awkward, but he just said, this individual has not been a good leader to his department. However, he's got a person that he needs to work better with, and you need to help these two divvy up the responsibilities so that the department functions well, and you get it done by the 1st of January. I'm like, okay, no problem.
Right.
So what we're going to do is meet with them individually and then together, and as long as the two of them are willing, we'll get it done.
Well, and I think that this company has gone through some hard times, and with those hard times, I think they're going to be so much more grateful when the times get better, because we go in and make it better.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to help with the culture. We're going to help with leadership. We're going to talk about expectations. We're going to help. It's just like resiliency in people can come through adversity.
One thing that helped me, and I'm going to my career instead of the childhood, is that coming out of college, I went to a factory as a chemical engineer and worked at an organization that was highly automated, very little manual labor, and we really analyzed problems before we spent money and that kind of thing. We had a lot of engineering help. And then I went to it, and we had a union in the facility, but it was a very good relationship, very few grievances, just great. Overall, really nice and well run.
Yes.
And then I went to another place where it was totally dysfunctional, just way out of control. But I learned so much in those 8 years at that plant in Chicago, at the dysfunctional place. You know what? Helping these two gentlemen work together better will be relatively easy because of the stuff we went through. I mean, people yelling and hollering at each other and, just
well, you had somebody shoot
ridiculous
someone.
Well, yeah, it happened, yeah. But because of that dysfunction, it's easier to handle almost anything. You know what I mean?
So thinking about where you are as you're thinking, whether it was your childhood or it could be you as an adult, or if you are at a work situation, a lot of times I talk to employees and they're having a difficult manager and they're like, I just want to quit. And I just want to say, hey, hold on, sit tight.
Yeah.
What are you going to learn through this difficult time? Do we want to run from it, or do we want to learn from it and grow from it?
Right.
Because you're going to learn much more from that manager that's not doing well. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because one of the presidents we coach, I remember he was coming after a president that was an awful, awful president. I mean, it's like the stories you hear of the worst leader ever. And I remember saying to him as he was about to take over, I said, you learned in 3 years more of what not to do than any person would ever even understand.
Right.
Because sometimes you can learn just as much from what not to do as you can what to do.
Of course. Yeah.
But here's the goal. As you're looking at your experience with your manager or your boss, or you're the leader or boss, remember that there's a reflection happening. So your team is reflecting you. So even if you're a bad manager, if you're getting bad behavior, they're reflecting you. I always say that about parenting. When you're looking at your kids,
Right.
How are they behaving?
If they're yelling at you,
Are you yelling at them?
you yell at them. Yeah. Right.
Or where's this influence coming in? Not always with parenting. I'm
Right.
sure there's other outside.
But some of
things.
those things are learned.
So going back,
Right.
Pete, to the resiliency and how. So what were some of the? You said that they looked back in history. Of, okay, we saw that successful people were ones of resilience that had tough childhood.
Yeah, and this is not necessarily a one-time thing, like you lose a job or you have an illness and you come back from it. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about long-term things.
Like mine, when I shared
like
mine.
Yours, yeah.
Mine was over
bullying,
years.
neglect, physical or sexual abuse, the death of a parent, addiction, mental illness. Those kind of things are chronic, or domestic violence.
Right.
Those are chronic issues that just don't go away quickly. And
Right.
you've got to figure out, how do I stay strong and get things done and help myself in the face of all that stuff, right? They've got a picture of Eleanor Roosevelt here, and they said her mother and her father, an alcoholic, died by the time she was 10. She was 10 years old. Both her parents are dead.
From alcoholism. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
So isn't it interesting, resilience, and how, I hear some people, Pete, saying resiliency being a generational thing, and I disagree with that.
It says here, resilient youth don't just rebound from these kind of things. What they do is much more complicated and courageous. For them, resilience is an ongoing battle. It's a way of approaching life, which I think that's you approach things that we're going to get through this, whatever it is. We're just going to get it done.
Right.
And you approach everything that way.
It's not an option of it's not going to work, and it's going to be in a positive way.
It has to work.
Right. It's going to be a positive way, and we're not going to be negative about it, because the negative thing is happening to us. Why would we want to be negative on top of it? So it's really important to look at your resiliency and say, what are you doing? There's a formula. So one of the things, Pete, that when you were saying that brilliant people, or some of the resilient people come from this adversity, Jack Canfield is a great author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, also of Success Principles, and he grew up in an alcoholic.
It was a messed up family.
Abusive family.
Abusive, not good.
And of course, super successful. And one of his formulas he talks about in his books is E plus R equals O.
Mm-hmm.
And so
the event.
Yeah. So explain that a little bit.
Well, there are all kinds of events that are happening, right, all the time, and the formula is E plus R equals O, and the E is an event, whether it's a loss of a job, a loss of a spouse, a loss of a loved one.
Or it could go back to the alcoholic that he was dealing with, the alcoholic father, I think his alcoholic.
Yeah, it could be that.
Or the abuse or whatever.
Some event that happens, and what your response is to that event will determine your outcome. And our current outcomes, things that are happening in our lives now, are the result of our response to previous events.
So here's the deal: is you have control over your response.
Right.
You can choose to respond one way or another.
Right.
To have a different outcome.
That's what you really have control over. That's it.
Right. So you can't control the event.
Right.
But what you can control is your response to the event. Which, if you're a negative response, it becomes a negative outcome. If it's a positive response, it becomes a positive outcome.
Yep.
So your goal in life, as you're listening, whether you're a leader, an employee, a family member, a spouse, a friend, is whatever event is coming at you, what is your approach going to be? Right. And what are you going to choose to do? No
matter how bad the event is, how can I take a positive approach to this?
And we talk about this a lot in businesses. When I'll sit down with an employee and they're very upset, something's going on, I'll say, okay, we can't control that person and how they behave. But what you can control is how you choose to run with this, how you choose to take this moment and what you're going to do with it. Right. And that's the difference. And I think this resiliency, which is our topic today, is success with resiliency. It's hard to say that.
Yeah, you got it.
Yes, resiliency with success is what are you choosing to do? And these people have chosen to take a great path.
Right.
No matter what's happened to them.
Looked at it and said, okay, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to handle it? Rather than, oh my goodness. They might have an oh my goodness moment, but it doesn't define them, and they don't stay there. Right?
They don't stay there.
Right. You can dip down there and go, oh boy, that shouldn't have happened. But the quicker you decide that we're going to do something about it, the better.
Exactly. So when we return, we're going to continue down this path, Pete, of this article.
Yep. And give you some tips of how to apply this information to your business.
Could your business use some help? Call 614-306-7922 to schedule your coaching session. 614-306-7922. Now, here's more Business Talk.
So we're talking today about resilience and how you can apply these ideas or principles into your business.
So Pete and I are business coaches, and we work with businesses, individuals. And if you're interested in a coaching session from us, let's talk about how that works. First of all, you're going to want to call us.
Right.
And call Pete at
614-306-7922.
So you could do that, or you can go to our website, which is takeactionbusinesscoaching.com.
Right.
And there'll be a contact us button that you can connect with us. And we're going to do a phone call with you for about 15 minutes, and then we'll arrange a time to meet with you in person.
Right.
If it makes sense.
If it makes sense to meet, we'll meet.
And then if you want to hear this show, because we've been talking about it we've had a couple segments, we're only halfway through. If you've missed it, go back to takeactionbusinesscoaching.com.
Right.
Click on Business Talk, which is one of the tabs.
Icon, yeah.
The icon, and you'll see all of our archived radio shows. And what we do is we encourage, and they're labeled. Alan does a great job of labeling them so that you can go back through and say, you know what, I want to hear that again. Or better yet, share them with some of your team and you can discuss the points. Because our goal of this show is to reach out and help, so that if you can apply one or two things to what we're talking about and make a difference, that's what coaching's all about. Now,
Yeah, so the cycle.
Yeah.
Education, application, implementation. So if you can learn a little bit from the show, how does it apply to your business, and then do something different, right?
Right, exactly.
And then learn a little more, and you get better and better
There
and
you
better,
go.
right?
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, so Pete, we're
Okay, so back to the resilience article. So
Yes.
there's a Kauai longitudinal study, a project that began in 1955 by two psychologists, Emmy Werner and Ruth Smith. And they were summarized in a 2000 book, Journey from Childhood to Middle Life. They studied 698 babies born on the island. Of the children in the study, they identified 129 as being at high risk for future problems because they faced 4 or more adversities at birth, ranging from poverty to family discord to alcoholism or mental illness in a home.
Okay, so give me those numbers again, because I was curious at what percent go through adversity.
Well,
I mean,
there in this study there are 698 babies.
so I'm
that
just
were
going to round
born.
it to 700.
So 700.
700 babies.
129 of them were identified as being at high risk for
Okay.
future issues because of pretty serious dysfunctional stuff going on in their home.
They have no choice. They're born into it.
It's
Got
not
it.
their fault.
Okay.
It's what they're in.
Understand.
2/3 of the high-risk ones went on to have difficulties of their own. 2/3 of them, in their family, they had similar issues. Delinquency, unplanned pregnancies, underemployment. The other third, though, and this is the third we're talking about, that in the previous segment, it's the other third fared very well at school and at work. They did as well or better than their low-risk peers, people that didn't have any issues. From affluent and stable homes. In adulthood, they found supportive partners and built loving families that often differed greatly from the ones they grew up in. They became, as these two authors described, competent, confident, and caring adults. And the big key here, they said they're active problem solvers who, over a period of decades, fought for better lives for themselves. They weren't necessarily gifted. They used whatever strengths they did have to their advantage, a particular talent, an engaging personality, a ready intelligence, and they sought out friends and teachers and neighbors who cared. They made plans to get better. They set ambitious but realistic goals for the future. And in early adulthood, they seized opportunities to move forward in life by way of higher education, military, new job, supportive partner, or parenthood.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, so I guess here are the tips.
Yeah, and then they asked these folks, the resilient group out of this dysfunctional group, the 30%, this is some of the quotes from them. They said, "I'm a fighter, I'm determined, and I will survive," said one woman who made her way out of an abusive childhood. "I give it 100% before I give up. I will never lose hope."
So it gave her strength.
Yeah.
She chose this to give her strength.
She's persistent. When things have to be done, I just do it.
That's
I
me.
am not
yes.
the type of person to run away no matter how difficult the problem, said another subject who became a bookkeeper. And another who became an aerospace engineer put it this way: "I don't let problems take control. I just pick myself up and start all over. You can always try again." So they're optimistic.
So there's that right before the break we talked about an E plus R equals O equation, which is an event plus a response equals an outcome. We can't control the event, but we can control our response. What our response choice is allows you to have a positive or negative outcome, and these are all positive responses.
So I'll read that one again. I like that one.
I do
This
too.
person became an aerospace engineer after coming from a very dysfunctional childhood. I don't let the problem take control. I pick myself up and start all over. You can always try again.
And so here's some homework for you to do. I want you guys to write down your E plus R equals O. What are all the events in your life right now?
Oh, that's good.
So it could be what? A bad boss. It could be a difficult childhood. It could be a difficult time right now, a financial pressure.
Yeah.
It
Business
could-
issues.
Business
that kind of
issue. Whatever it is, write down your event. Now, next to it, I want you to write two things. What is your response? What has it been? And what will it be? So how have you been responding?
Yes. What would be a positive response?
Yes, yes. Because remember, whatever it is, positive or negative, the outcome will be positive. And it's funny because Pete and I, we always, whenever something bad happens, I go, oh, watch what happens. Something great's going to come out of this. And doesn't it happen every time? Every single time. It comes out great. Yep. So that'll be your homework of what is your resiliency going to be, and that's part of it. It's attitude is what I'm hearing you say, Pete.
Yeah. So other research suggests the importance of the fighter within in a 2010 paper in the Journal of Abnormal Psychology. Now, there's one we haven't subscribed to.
No, I like that. That would be good. Yeah. Okay.
The University of Oxford reported on 81 adults who had been held as political prisoners in East Germany. Oh, my goodness.
That would be
They'd been
pretty
subjected
hardcore.
to mental and physical abuse, beatings, threats, being kept in the dark. Decades after they were released, 2/3 of the prisoners had at some point met criteria for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, while about 1/3 of the prisoners who had not. What made the people more likely to suffer from PTSD had found the extent to which the prisoners fought back in their own minds made a big difference. They made a bigger difference than the severity of the abuse. Those who felt mentally defeated, who felt like they were nothing, or who quit caring of what became of them, were more likely to be victims of PTSD later. By contrast, prisoners who'd resisted from within themselves, even if they appear to have been given up on the outside by complying with the guards, fared better down the line. This sort of inner defiance is how one man, an officer in the military, told me he survived years of bullying as a child, or refused to accept what they said about me was true. They refused to accept it.
Because it's all about your mind, being strong in your mind.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. That is good. Now, I thought it was interesting because I took a look at the article before we started talking about it. Pete, talk about some of the famous people that have been really famous that have gone through some hard times.
I've got some pictures here. Louis Armstrong left school in the 5th grade to support his family. Imagine, how old are you in 5th grade?
12?
Gosh,
how old are you? 12
11?
or 11, maybe 11.
11 years old?
I think you're 11 because you're 12. Yeah, because you're 12 when you're in 7th grade, 13 in 8th grade. So you're 11 years old.
11 years old. Go get a job, kid, and support your family.
Oh, my gosh.
Whoa.
Wow.
John D. Rockefeller's father was a con man. He was one of the richest men in the world. And his father was a con man, as most of the time was absent, gone.
Interesting.
Oprah Winfrey was sexually abused by her relatives. Oh, my gosh. And then, of course, Eleanor Roosevelt. That was a good one.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because my father had an alcoholic dad who always was in the bars, every day in the bars, couldn't hold down a job.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if he was abusive or not, but I'm sure he was. You didn't talk about it back then. But, and he became very successful and overcame it. Isn't that interesting?
So here it says in here, back in 1962, the Goertzel's finding that so many prominent people have grown up with hard times may have seemed counterintuitive, but given what we know now about stress and coping, it isn't that surprising. Coping with stress is a lot like exercise. You become stronger with practice.
Oh, so looking at your situation at work, you're working overtime or you have a difficult customer, these things are going to make you stronger as well, is what I'm hearing you say.
Dr. Deinsbier gathered evidence from a wide range of this is a 1989 study in the Psychological Review magazine. He gathered evidence from a wide range of human and animal studies demonstrating that exposure to intermittent stressors, cold temperatures, aerobic exercise, which you make me do, Peg.
I do make you do aerobic exercise. Pete pushes back, but
made individuals physiologically tougher. So I used to say this, is that if you're physically tough, it's easier to be mentally tough.
Well, absolutely. We talk about our self-care and how are you taking care of yourself.
Right.
One of which is exercise.
Exercise, yeah.
Exercise.
Consistent. Making
sure, like Pete and I and Mark, our
friend
and clients,
yeah.
we get up and every morning we work out.
Several days a week.
Yes. Well, we try to do it every day. Maybe it's 4 times.
Now, we do try to avoid the cold temperatures.
Yes. But they're saying to go after cold
Yeah,
temperatures.
get out there in the snow, guys.
Get out there
with
in
your
the
bare
snow.
feet.
Get cold because it's going to make you stronger. That's what it says.
It does. Yeah, it does say that. It's counterintuitive. Cold temperatures, aerobic exercise makes individuals physiologically stronger.
Which helps our resiliency.
If a stressor seems manageable, we perceive it as a challenge, and adrenaline, which boosts energy, focus, and coping, is released. So your body has a way to deal with it if you look at it the right way.
And that goes
it's a
back
challenge to me.
E plus R
well, I'm
going
to solve this challenge, by God.
Oh, my. So
Yeah.
it's all in our response to what we're given. So when we return, Pete, we have more to go over this and more strategies, okay, to talk about resiliency.
Yes.
And how you're going to deal with it.
Right.
To learn more about today's topic, call 614-306-7922. Now, back to more business talk.
Well, we're talking about resiliency today, guys. And Peg, where do you think we should go from here?
So one of the things that if you missed, you can go to takeactionbusinesscoaching.com, our website, and listen to the show in its entirety because we archive all of our shows. Now, it's not going to be there like today as you're listening, but it will be there next week if you go there and say, hey, I want to hear this in its entirety. So I want to recap first. Let's recap of what we've covered because you might have just tuned in now. Number one, we're talking a lot about what is it that happens to you in your youth. Mm-hmm. And how do you deal with it? And what we were saying is that a lot of the successful people they did in a study, Pete,
right,
that 75% had difficulties, trouble in their
pretty
youth.
severe, chronic, long-term difficulties. Yes.
And so then what we did is we went from there and we were giving examples of, okay, there's an equation that we use called E plus R equals O. Right. Your event plus your response equals your outcome. And what we're hearing is a lot of famous people like Eleanor Roosevelt,
Rockefeller, Oprah Winfrey,
that they all had challenges. Jack Canfield,
right,
who,
big time.
And what they decided, their response was positive. And what I heard you say before is they got strong in their mind. They looked at it as a challenge. Right. That when stress comes onto you, your resiliency comes from your approach to that stress. I'm going to conquer it. I'm going to go after it. And that happens in everything we do.
I'm not going to let it overcome me. It's not going to define me.
It's going to make me stronger.
Right.
And so what we're seeing is it's your approach to that creates great resiliency. So as you're looking at it, and we just approach this as you're looking at a bad manager or a tough customer, it's what are you going to choose to make that tough? And it's not, and they also said, I want to just point this out because I was thinking of Allie again. Allie, as any teenager will have some challenges, it's not just one-time change that allows a strong resiliency. I mean, one-time stressor. It's over time in your ability to get knocked down and get back up,
and realize that a lot of it is about how you think about the issue.
Okay.
How do I think about it, and then how do I respond based on my thoughts?
Did I capture it?
I think you did.
I did.
Yeah.
Is that everything up to this moment?
I think so. And just to reinforce that, there's another multi-year study of 2,000 adults. These are 18 to 100-year-old people, published in 2010 in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology.
Okay.
University of Buffalo psychologist Mark Seary and his colleagues found that those who had some known adversity in their lives were both higher functioning and more satisfied with their lives than those who had experienced extremely high levels of hardship, and compared with those who had experienced no adversity at all. They also coped better with more recent problems they encountered, leading the study's authors to conclude, in partial agreement with Nietzsche, who was a German philosopher, in moderation, whatever does not kill us may indeed make us stronger. So, in moderation. So if it actually kills us, that's not good for us.
Right. But it goes back to that. I'm glad that they brought that up because I was sitting there thinking, well, this is all the premise that whatever doesn't kill you will make you stronger. Yeah. And I believe that strength does come. Now, one thing we did say is that if you don't go through adversity, this doesn't mean that you won't be successful. It just means
it doesn't mean that.
That doesn't mean that.
Right.
Which is one of the things I've asked you before.
But it does suggest something here about challenging yourself. It says taking up crew or judo or studying for an advanced degree or mastering an instrument. Hard things that aren't emotional or unexpected help us practice for those that are. So disciplining yourself by doing something that is way out of your comfort zone, like for me, it'd be ballroom dancing.
Right.
Holy cow.
Yes.
You know?
Well, it was funny because I was talking to Allie yesterday, and Allie is my daughter, and I just said, I'm really proud.
She's 16.
She's 16, and I had this conversation with her just yesterday, and I said, Allie, I want to tell you something. I want to show you a pattern I see in you. You do things that you don't want to do to get to a place that you want to be.
Oh, right.
I mean, you're doing things that are tough. You're doing things you don't even want to do, but it's because you like the outcome. And you challenge yourself and you pressure yourself and you push yourself. And that's stressors. Like, you don't have to have an alcoholic situation or a domestic violence or a poverty. It can be that you're pushing yourself beyond the comfort zone in the stressors to grow.
Right.
And
That's
that'll
good.
be constantly challenging yourself.
And some other suggestions that they have is taking control where you can empower you. And we believe this anyway because we invite our clients to create 90-day plans. We want everybody to have a 90-day plan because when you make a plan, you feel more powerful.
And when we see people, so Pete and I, and this is business talk, and we're business coaches, and we have 4 coaches. There's Dawn and Michelle and Pete and I, and we're here in Columbus, but we actually coach all over the United States and into Canada. One of the things that we always say is when we walk into a business, and if we see stress, if we see a lot of emotion, we realize they don't have a plan.
Make a realistic plan to improve your situation. I'm reading from the article and work toward it every day.
See, that's
now,
what we do.
We do this. Progress shores us up and calms us down.
And we can see that immediately. We're like, the first thing
At
you need
least
to
you
do
have
is,
a plan.
Yeah,
Right?
because it shows hope. Because when you don't have a plan and you don't have a step-by-step way,
Yeah.
and then here's the thing. When we meet with you, one of the things we do is we figure out where you're going to be and where you want to be. But we also talk about what you're not going to do. Because you're so overwhelmed, and we say you're going to prioritize.
Oh, sometimes you worry about, you've got 15 things that you could do, and you worry about the dozen that you maybe shouldn't do.
Right.
Instead of focusing on the 3 or 4 that you could do right now.
In the next 90 days. And
Yeah,
that's
that
one
would
of the
get you
things
in
as
a better
coaches we
position.
do.
Right.
So if you are interested in meeting with us and say, Peg, I'd like a plan. Pete, let's get together. Give us a call.
614-306-7922. And the last couple tips here is remember the times when you have been courageous and strong. Remind yourself of that. Sometimes we remember what we've done wrong or what's gone wrong, but we don't focus on the things that you have or gratitude. It's reminding yourself to be grateful. Think back on a time when you were challenged and give yourself credit for how you made it through. You may already be more resilient than you already think.
I like that.
You are.
That's excellent.
And I have a related article here about, and I thought this was really interesting, why immigrants made such good entrepreneurs. And they've often overcome a lot of hardships. Now, we have
going back to the resiliency. I got it saying the same thing.
It has a chart here from 1998 to 2016, and it shows startups of businesses. So who became the percentage of people in the United States who became entrepreneurs in a given month and the composition of entrepreneurs by birth. And the immigrant population, you can see, Peg, on the chart, it goes from 11% all the way up to, in the latest year, 29%.
And that's representing...
So it's steadily the percentage of businesses started by immigrants. It's been steadily rising.
Oh, very good.
Which is cool. But the article says that there's some specific things that we can go through in a minute. But basically, a lot of people that are coming here have come from much worse situations. Like we think we have it bad when we get in a traffic jam.
Right.
These people are worried about the roof caving in and somebody coming in and robbing them in their home. And, we have it made in many ways. And they have overcome adversity. And that's why they may jump into what we think is a scary situation to start a business a lot more easily than we do.
Well, and it's funny because we were working and interviewing an employee to work for a company, and she had come from, I want to say, Ukraine. And I was like, wow, you came over here, and she said, I didn't have a lick. I couldn't speak a lick of English. And I had nothing, and I came here. And I think to your point, and guess what? She was an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And,
so land of opportunity, it says the first point is the vast majority of migrants move to improve the economic and educational stature or status of themselves and their families. When they arrive, they're aggressive about taking advantage of our stable economic system and law and order, things that a lot of times they can't count on back home. We take it for granted.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a little bit of gratitude here, Pete.
Yeah, and they say, well, this is not a big problem.
Like, we don't make a big deal out of this, you know.
Yeah.
So they're making us work extra. You're complaining. I'll take those hours.
They quoted one of these folks. They said, as long as you are prepared to work hard and take some risks, it's easy to succeed. They were amazed by the quality of free education and the benefits of the infrastructure that most of us are not even aware of because it's around us. Rolling with the punches. All entrepreneurs experience failure and rejection, but outsiders are often better prepared to not be devastated by hard times because they've already faced harder times than most people can even imagine.
So that goes back to that resiliency. I see why this article tied into the other. It's your approach. It's all in your approach of what are you going to see, what are you going to do, and how are you going to approach it.
Yep.
I've been through here, done this. It's worse. It's not going to determine who I am.
Watching social cues. This is interesting because outsiders fear making a mistake in a new world. They become adept at picking up cues from other people that signal mistrust or misunderstanding. Similarly, they become good at reading people and noticing the relationships between groups they do business with. That potentially makes them more shrewd and more perceptive in situations such as negotiations or sales.
So that's interesting. So they're saying because they're not aware of, it's a different culture.
Well, they're in a heightened awareness state because they are afraid of making a social gaffe, a mistake.
Right.
And so they're watching everybody's body language, listening to tone of voice, maybe more focused than we would be.
Which is what we encourage people to do in order to grow, is to, as a strategy of looking at relationships, building relationships, looking at tone, looking at body language, and responding accordingly. And so interesting. That's one of them.
They use their network. So immigrants don't have an array of local networks that we might have, but they often substitute that with a broad network of co-nationals, so people that came from the same country that they did, and they seek these people out and help each other, which is kind of neat.
That has been, you know what, Pete, I like this. This topic has been great. I love the immigrants and this ending part, but as it relates to resiliency.
Yeah, and this last one, seeing things with fresh eyes. Because immigrants learn about their new home culture and its rules and language and etiquette from the outside, they often don't have the perspectives that we have or the biases. They see possibilities and opportunities where we don't. So they're a little more open, a little more childlike.
Isn't that interesting? And when you're childlike, you're more open, you're going to see what...
And you have fun because you like to run and jump.
Yes, you're going to see what other people can't.
Yep.
So here's your challenge and your homework. One was, what is an event in your life and what's your response and what should it be to have a positive outcome? Right. Another piece of homework is, what is it you're not seeing that you should see?
Right. So maybe in the next course of business, in the next day, be extremely focused on how that other person you're talking to is reacting to what you're saying.
Well,
Just
that too.
watch very, very carefully.
Right. And what is it that's out there that you should be taking advantage of that you've never noticed before? Become super self-aware of what's around you and what opportunities are there. And what have you taken for granted? Just like the immigrants have done.
Right.
Let's do that.
Yeah, and express some gratitude maybe to the people around you or even to yourself for all the great things that are happening to you.
And then you'll continue to be happy and successful.
Fantastic.
This has been Business Talk, your business, your success. Sponsored by Take Action Business Coaching. The opinions expressed were those of the participants and may not be the views of the staff, advertisers, and owners of the station. Advice given was not intended to replace that of your business advisor. For more information about the topics discussed today, call 614-306-7922. 614-306-7922. Tune in next week at this time for more Business Talk, your business, your success.